Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Foundation for the Carolinas Nonprofit Seminar Series. Today, we will be talking about the collaborative power of our community and how nonprofits can work together and with public and private organizations to really support our mission and strengthen our sustainability as we move forward. My name is Jessie Herman. I am an Assistant Vice President in the Centers for Giving, and I work with our nonprofit clients here at the Foundation. We have a Center for Nonprofit Sustainability where we work with nonprofits to do trainings like this and workshops, as well as fund management services. So connecting nonprofits with grant making opportunities and investment services as well. We would love to tell you more about this if you are not already involved with the Foundation. And in just a few minutes here, you'll see my email pop into the chat. Please feel free to reach out and we would love to connect and learn more about your organization. So today's session will be recorded. If you miss anything, have to leave early, no problem. It will be posted on the Foundation's YouTube channel. And as we go about, if you have questions, please feel free to submit those either in the chat box or the Q&A box. We will have time for questions at the end. So to get us started, I would love to ask each of our panelists just to tell us a little bit about who they are, what they do, and what their organization does as well. So Patricia, why don't you go ahead and start there?
Sure. So my name is Patricia Massey-Hoke. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Impact Fund. I've been here for about 3 years and the organization's been around for about 19. So we are a giving circle. So our members give collectively to our organization and then we re-grant those dollars out into the community each year. And in addition to that, we do education and engagement events for our members as well as for the broader community around social issues, topics in philanthropy, and just giving women who are philanthropically inclined, interested in nonprofit organizations and nonprofit service the opportunity to meet each other and connect, and ultimately connect with our community and with nonprofit organizations that we seek to serve. Part of my role here, I was in development institutional philanthropy at Davidson College and then had some prior background in management consulting as well as nonprofit service. So I'm really happy to be here with you all today.
Great, thank you, Patricia. Harold.
Hello, good afternoon. Harold Rice here with the Ada Jenkins Center. I've been in my role of going on 2 years now at the Ada Jenkins Center, and we exist to create lasting economic stability for families. And we have a 2-generational approach where we work with children who are 1 to 3 grades behind with catching up in math and reading. And without that support, these families, these children may end up we may serve them as adults. And so we want to prevent that early on. We also work with adults in what I call the economic mobility department, where it's pretty much case management wraparound services. We are the only case management organization in the North meaning Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. And as people drive up 77, I'd like to illustrate that we are the guardrails of the North. When you drive up 77, you come towards exit 30, towards Davidson, you see the beautiful boats in the water. What you don't pay attention to are the guardrails, keeping all the cars from falling into the water. That's who we are for the families in the North. And so we want to continue doing those things, including food insecurities. We have a food pantry, what I call a little mini bodega, that continues to support these families even throughout these tough times. So again, just grateful to be here and add to this conversation.
Great, thank you, Harold. And Steve.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Cole. I'm the VP of Advancement at Veterans Bridge Home. Veterans Bridge Home is a collective impact organization focusing on service members, veterans, and their family members to ensure that they receive the support that our generous community has. Collective impact organizations like ours, we're focused on a specific population. And so our job is to make sure that the right veteran or family member gets the right service in the least amount of time. We believe that veterans make great neighbors, but the transition from the service, whether it was after Vietnam or today for veterans leaving the service, can be challenging. And so we work through the communities that we serve. Veterans Bridge Home now covers 49 counties across North and South Carolina to do that work for these men and women who serve their country.
Great. So as you can tell, we have very diverse experience on the panel today with funders and grant seekers. So it's going to be a great conversation to learn how collaboration works on those sides. But collaboration can be really difficult. And I wanted to start with just a little piece that I've read on a blog post. It's a nonprofit blog I enjoy. And this is titled Answers on Grant Proposals If Nonprofits Were Brutally Honest with Fundraisers. And the question here is, how does your organization partner with other organizations in the area? To which the brutally honest answer is, we have an unwritten agreement to sign desperate last-minute letters of support for one another for grant proposals like this one. Once in a while, we go out together, especially when we don't get grants like this. Please send money. So I think that's often kind of the ethos we think of with grant making and partnership, that it can be really difficult and tedious. So we're here to learn, how do we make the best partnerships we can to really strengthen our nonprofit community? So to start us with an open question, anyone here, why do you think nonprofit is such a trending topic in the nonprofit world, particularly what you might see on grant applications?
I'll jump in here. I smiled when you were talking about that post, because back in the day we used to call those letters liar letters, right? I mean, it's true. What I've tried to do here in the North is to really be intentional about the partnerships that we have, so we can answer that question in its true form. And how we do that is position ourselves in the best core services where we can have the most impact and outcomes. And so what that means for us is not try to be everything to everyone anymore, right? We can really focus on what we're really good at and partner where we need to strengthen areas. And so those letters become true. So it makes us as organizations really collaborate and really partner, because we're leveraging one another. So, we're moving away from the liar letters and really focusing on partnerships, because we realize that, we can no longer be everything to everyone. And organizations have really specialized in certain areas, which makes sense. And so that's kind of how we're addressing that question, is to really dive deep into what we're doing and partner where it makes sense for us to partner, where we probably in the past didn't have the best outcomes.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll follow up to what Harold said and name the elephant in the room that I'm the one funder sitting on this call, but I know exactly what blog you're talking about and I read it frequently. And I think something that Harold said is really important. Collaboration is really, really hard, and true partnership is really, really hard and takes time and energy and intention. But I think one of the things that makes it successful is doing exactly what Harold said, which is knowing what you offer in the space. So, right, thinking about this continuum of services in for any type of social issue. It could be in the education space, it could be in the food security space, right? And knowing where you play and what you're good at, and being okay being just good at that piece of the puzzle, and then collaborating with others who are in different places on the continuum, but staying true to your mission and your values as an institution, and then partnering with others who can supplement that, but also complement your services, right? And so I think, as we've been doing a lot of our own introspection at Women's Impact Fund as a grant maker, and thinking about how we can be really better funders and ultimately partners in the community. And one of the ways is through the questions we ask. And so we did ask a question this year within our grant application around that. Just tell us about where you sort of fit on the continuum of services, what makes what you do unique, and who else supports you in that work. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I think that is a critical part of what can make collaboration successful.
Absolutely. And I think that is a great lead in to Steve and the work that Veterans Bridge Home does. If you could talk just a little bit more about how that platform works and what that collaboration facilitates as.
Yeah, I mean, I think Harold had a great point, right? There's not everybody can do everything. And what we know about the people that we serve is that the average veteran needs 2.5 things, whatever it is: housing and employment and social capital and rental assistance, right? I mean, it's typical for someone to come in and say, I have this need. And when you peel back the onion a little bit, you find that, I don't have a place to live because I don't have a job. I don't have a job because I didn't ever take advantage of the education benefits that exist in the community, right? That's 3 things right away. And without collaboration, what we're saying is, I love you, my client, so much that I'm willing to give you C+ service in things that I actually don't do well in, because I don't want to share you, because if I shared you with someone else, then maybe they would serve you, and then God forbid you'd actually get the help that you need, right? And that's, so I think organizations are realizing like there's plenty of credit to go around for helping people. If we really love the people that we serve, if we really want the best for the people that we serve, we should connect them to the things that do the best work in the areas that they've identified, in the areas that we've identified with them that they need most. This community in this state in 2013 piloted what is now Love It or Hate It. You can thank probably us for this, Unitas, which you may know for some of you nonprofits as NC Care 360. NC Care 360 is powered by a software called Unitas, and Unitas reached out to us in about 2017 in Charlotte, and we created a network of about 30 providers in Charlotte that already were helping veterans in some way. In 2017, there were 4 organizations like Charlotte across the state doing the same thing with 300 partners, and partners being nonprofit organizations across the state, with 4 organizations like ours. In 2020, that's now 3 networks with 2 quarterbacks. We're one of 2 with 406 partners. And since 2019, it's basically Unitas for the rest of us, right? So this was just for veterans until 2019. And so now it's that, like, a way to connect people in their case with providers across our state, across the social determinants of health. It's a lot. I apologize, but basically, like, that system, for better or worse, it's a system that we have as a state, and it allows all of the nonprofits that use it to see their shared client and to see what services they've already received. And it's a step in the right direction towards greater collaboration.
Great. And Harold, I'd love to get your perspective on working with other nonprofit organizations in service delivery. I saw the announcement that you guys have a new partnership with Habitat for Humanity, and would love to learn more about kind of how that came to be. How did that go from zero to the press release?
Well, yeah, when I came aboard, I saw an opportunity within the facility or the campus to generate some revenue and to bring in partners where we could leverage one another. And Habitat was a perfect partner for us because we were already in some programming together and utilizing our case management piece and working with a project that was having potential home buyers go through workshops and potentially get a home. And so it just made sense because our teams were already in conversation. And so when I reached out to Laura a while back, I mentioned to her that it'd be pretty dope if they could come in and bunk up with us and co-locate because our model has changed. COVID changed everything and allowed us to work remotely. And when I told a few of our team members that, hey, guess what? Your work is remotely going forward, right? You'll have some landing space, which freed up office space. And so when Habitat made some decisions with their building, they reached back out and say, it's the perfect time because we feel like, they need to continue presence in the North. And, it'd be great if we could co-locate. And so they came up, we had great conversations, primarily talked about culture because we'll be in the same space, same building. We want to make sure that we're kind of operating similarly from the same values. And so we had those conversations. Their key leadership came and we had great conversations around culture because we want them to feel like this is their ownership of their place as well, and not that they're just a tenant, if you will. And so after those conversations, they went back and felt like it would be a great opportunity to continue a presence in the North. We were a familiar organization with families in the North, and we could continue to leverage our relationship for additional programming. And so that made sense. And not just programming, community events as well. Both of us are in the community. We're trying to continue to be a bridge builder in the community. And so if we can collaborate on community events, it just makes it all the better on our internal resources and as far as development, as far as community outreach staff. And so it's just a lot of wins around that for both of us. And again, just operating from what we call an ideal lens: inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. All of our programs, all of their programs kind of operate from that same lens. It's not just diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our programs operate from the ideal lens of inclusion, diversity, equity, and then the access piece. Because you can have diversity, equity, and inclusion, but if there's no access, then it's all for naught.
Sure. Great. So thank you. It's great to get kind of that perspective on how it operates on the nonprofit side in terms of program and mission delivery. And Patricia, I'd love to hear, as a funder, how collaboration works within your organization. You know, collective giving is kind of the ideal of collaboration. We've got groups of people coming together to make change. So if you could maybe walk us through that process and where you see collaboration in your work.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you said it, Jesse, right? The very foundation of what we are as a giving circle, as a collective impact organization, would not be possible if we did not have members who chose to give to the organization and chose to collaborate with their funding to pool their philanthropic dollars to make an impact in the community. So we're really founded on that idea of more is possible when we do it together. And I guess sort of two ways to answer your question. The first is more sort of our internal or our members side. We have 2 staff members at Women's Impact Fund. And if you've taken a look at our website or looked at the list of events that we have coming up, it would become clear that 2 people could not do that on their own. So our work is really driven by our members. And I mean our grant making, to our educational events, to our networking events, our follow-up with grantees after they receive a grant from us. Our finance committee, which is, obviously common to most nonprofit organizations. So we have about 120 of our 460 members who sit on one of our committees, and they really do the work of Women's Impact Fund. I offer some logistical support for events, and I try to, serve as a face of the work in the community and work with our nonprofits. So I find plenty to do with my time, but it's really our members who do it. And again, that comes back to this idea that they will get more out of the organization when they come together with others, and also learn about their own philanthropic interests and desires. So whether that's getting to live out a commitment that they already have, or learn about the issues and topics in the community that they might be more interested in further pursuing outside of Women's Impact Fund. So that's sort of one piece of our puzzle, is on that membership side. And then obviously the other side is us as a funder, as a philanthropic institution. And this goes back to some of what I was saying earlier. I think in some ways, when we look at organizations that are talking about collaboration, or we're looking at funding a collaboration, we want to be really clear on what collaboration means, what partnership means for the institutions that are working together, and asking, more questions around how they'll be accountable to each other, right? But also not losing sight of the fact that we as a funder have to ask ourselves the same questions. So we had a set of organizations that came to us. They ultimately did not end up being a grantee, but we were talking about how the funding, literally the check writing, would work. And perhaps partially because I've sat in a grant writing seat before, I was just like, look, is who gets the check from us? Is that like an issue? And they're like, it could be. And I was like, well, write 2 checks. No big deal. So part of it is us also being open to what systems or processes do we have that may be a barrier, whether they're real or perceived barriers, to supporting collaboration among nonprofits. I'll also say, we have work to do here. We have ways we can improve. I don't think most philanthropic institutions are set up perfectly to support truly collaborative efforts from a funding perspective. There needs to be like the one fiscal sponsor, the one organization that's still the lead, right? Sort of that idea. So as funders think differently about how we partner, and I know something we think about is how could we better support collaborations in a way that makes it, there's one thing that the nonprofits that are working together don't have to figure out, because we can just answer it for them, right? So the issues that we face, I mean, in Charlotte, nationally, globally, are not going to be solved by any one of us, right? Or any one institution or any one philanthropic funder. We only give away about $450,000 to $500,000 a year. It's a lot of money, but it's not that much money. And philanthropy is about this much of the huge amount of investment that we need to actually solve issues in the community. So, further is just what it looks like when the nonprofit community, philanthropy, the city, the county, right? Governmental institutions also come together to really support change. So I think we're on the cusp of some exciting work in that way in Charlotte as well. So.
It definitely does seem like there's more news every month you hear about nonprofits collaborating. So I appreciate your optimistic outlook there. And you mentioned,
it does. I think Patricia has a great point. Collaboration doesn't just happen. I mean, it takes people to lead it. Like all these organizations are doing all they can. They're all underfunded. They're all understaffed. They're all overworked. And collaboration becomes just one more thing, right? And we all know we need to work together. I mean, there's no nonprofit out there that thinks, boy, I can just do it all myself. But that's where, I mean, selfishly, that's like in our little lane of veterans and military families, that's what we do. Like, we don't do the thing. I tell people, we don't deliver the hug. The hug gets delivered by the organization that provides the direct service. We're the very low budget Amazon, right? Amazon takes people who have things and people who want things, and they put them together so that the person who wants something, the person who has something, can get to each other really quickly. We did without Amazon for a long time, so you can do it, but it takes a lot longer to do those things. So having like a Women's Impact Fund who's like, no, we can help you work together. In fact, we can incentivize you to work together by paying you to work together, essentially, is what some of these funders are doing, right? That's what's going on there. And you need organizations to push you and cajole you into it sometimes. So I think that's where funders really do great work. The best ones really understand the system and can strategically put the money where it can do the best work. So.
Right. And Steve, I know Veteran Bridge Home works with so many different organizations. I think you said around 30 that are in the local continuum of care. If someone approaches you, they want to work with the organization, what are you looking for? What kind of questions are you asking there, and what red flags do you see?
Yeah, I don't know about red flags. I mean, do you want to serve people? I think the thing that we want from the folks that we work with is like, are you tracking what you're doing, and can you share that information, right? Do you want to use the technology? Because if I'm serving a veteran and I'm just doing it on an Excel spreadsheet, it's really not all that helpful, because we need to know as a community, like, where has Steve Cole been, and what has he gotten, and what was his outcomes, and what else does he need? And so, subscribing to that for housing organizations means one more, it's like triple entry for folks. And for most nonprofits, it's another entry, right? So organizations across this community and across the state are running into veterans all the time. But if they don't ask them, are you a veteran? Then what we're doing is potentially missing out on support that exists in the community. Housing is a great example. Harold knows SSVF, right? It's supportive services for veteran families. It's a federal program that supports homeless veterans or veterans that have an eviction like imminently. If I go to Roof Above and they don't ask me, fortunately they do. They ask you, are you a veteran? Yes. And there's only one bed to give. Well, I don't have to take that last bed because I'm a veteran. I can take the SSVF bed potentially. But if they don't ask me and I take the last bed and Jesse needs a bed, then I guess that was not a great example. But if Harold takes the last bed, he's out of luck. He can't get the last bed if he's not a vet. I just kind of screwed that up because I was trying to, anyway. If we don't use the veteran benefits for veterans, then we're wasting them, right? We're going to waste federal resources. We should spend all of the federal government's money all of the state's money, all of the county's money, and then get into Patricia's money, right? That's how it should be, right? So, you know, if we don't know that people are veterans, if we don't know that they're in the system, then it's really hard to work together to serve people in the population that we specifically serve. So if you're unwilling to subscribe to using Unitas, using NC Care 360, then you might not be a great partner because you think that your thing is the only thing that matters potentially. So I think there's got to be a little humility. A good partner understands exactly what they do, and maybe more importantly, exactly what they don't do. What can I do for the people that I serve, and what can't I do? And don't do the things you can't do. I think the best partners out there are very confident in what they do, and they're not apologetic for what they don't do. They shouldn't be. Again, A+ service is the thing that I do really well. C+ service is for like, I don't want to do C+ service.
So it sounds like the nonprofit version of the economic theory of comparative advantage. You know, do what you do best and share what you can't. But Harold, I'm curious kind of your thoughts on the same question. When you're trying to work with a new partner or you're thinking about a future collaboration, what are you looking for? And, you know, do you agree that it's, you know, humility and subscription to the same ideas is what makes a really strong partnership?
I do, and to add to what Steve was sharing, you know, I think it was Gloria Steiner that said, it's the structure and not the striver. And so, you know, a question to a potential partner would be, are you willing to get into some good trouble to help some people, right? Because oftentimes it's the structure that really prevents people from getting into housing, to Steve's point, or other services or programs. So how can we think differently or outside of that box and push back on the structure to change the structure so people can qualify or become eligible? And so if someone is really rigid in their they see rules versus guidelines, for me, they wouldn't be a good partner, because far too long we've operated in that same mindset that, nope, it's the rules, HUD said it. So, you know, we have to go and push to say, hey, I know HUD said it, said it for a while, but how can we have so many people we have data on that have the same issue? How can we push the system to open it up for these people and to serve them in a better way? So that's, for me, what make a great collaborative partner, someone that's willing to serve people and get into some good trouble and move the structure, move the system so we can serve people in a greater way.
Yeah, harder to measure on a grant application there, but equally just as important. And Patricia, you mentioned that you have, what, a quarter of your members serving on different committees, which sounds like this behemoth of board management. So I'm curious, for Steve and Harold, is your board involved in these partnerships? Are they helping to make those decisions or watch the metrics and outcomes?
For me, yes. And reason being, I came in during COVID, and you know, gave us an opportunity to look at all of our programming. And you know, I think a lot of nonprofits were able to look at services that they were not able to quickly ramp up virtually, to say, okay, well, is this something we really need to do? And so what I did was form a subcommittee on my board to look at some of the programming, and we used what I call the brace model to look at our programming. Do we build a program? Is there something we need to build? Is there something we retain? Do we acquire something new? Do we collaborate, or do we just eliminate the services? And so we looked at all of our programming and decided that we need to virtually eliminate but collaborate at the same time. So our medical program, we were not able to really ramp that program up because other free and charitable clinics during COVID focused on free and charitable clinics serving the patient. They didn't focus on food pantry. They didn't focus on after school. They didn't focus on wraparound services. They focused on that one thing, seeing patients. And so it gave us an opportunity to say, you know what, this might not be the best position for us. We need to eliminate and collaborate in a sense. And so the board was with us every step of the way. We also met with the other potential partners. We met with their board. We had conversations about the impact it would have on the negative impact or positive impact it would have on both organizations. And long as we were in lock and step as two organizations, how we communicated that to the community we were both fine with moving forward. And we did, because we felt like at the end of the day, we wanted that, to Steve's point, A+ service for the customer. And so that's what we did. And and we had some funders come back and say, you know what, that was the best thing you could have done. We had a hard time trying to distinguish who we were going to fund in the same space, in the same, in the North, basically doing the same thing. But now you make it so much easier that you support them. And now we can expand your operation and fund another area that's core to your business. So our board was definitely involved, and the other board was involved as well.
I've been taking notes on what Harold's been saying. I like eliminate and collaborate. I like that. That's an incredible turn of phrase. And also I like getting into good trouble together. That's maybe I should use that as an excuse more often in my life. But our board has been really instrumental in strategic partnerships, especially as we've been growing. We've working with the Department of Defense, working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, those are things that we really needed the horsepower that a board should be able to give you. Local partnerships, our network directors are really responsible for the partnerships inside our community, people that they can, go have a cup of coffee with, go, sit side by side to talk about things, at their office and understand their pain points and how we can support them to make their lives easier. Board, as we're growing into the triad, our former board chair has been doing some great work with another peer organization in Greensboro. They're all volunteer led. They can raise money and they have relationships, but they don't have programmatic assets. We have programmatic assets, but we don't really have relationships in the triad area. And that, that's what that's what our board members have really been able to leverage for us.
Sure. So we've talked about how to identify a good partner. We've got our board engagement, so we're ready to move forward with our partnership here. I'm curious to learn more about, logistically and contractually, what do you do to onboard someone? Are you, signing memorandums of understanding? Are you developing contracts or charters? What does that look like for your organization?
It depends, right? I mean, some of them are contractual. A few years ago, we reached out to Catholic Charities Diocese of Charlotte about the SSVF grant, federal grant for homeless veterans in this community. We don't have relationships with landlords. They do, right? They don't know anything about veteran care. We do. So part of what that relationship was, you do case management really well, and you've got landlord engagement, and you do that really well. And we do qualifying veterans for a program that, let's be honest, like federal grants are tough. We'd never done a federal grant, and they had. So it's been a great relationship, but that's like a real, no kidding, they're paying us money to be to work with them. Same with Mecklenburg County. We were working as a partner of Mecklenburg County, then we were a community support grantee, and now we're a provider for the county. Those are like contractual agreements, but a lot of our partnership agreements are done by charisma from our network director, from our care coordinators that are like telling those providers that we really, really need them and they're doing great work. Can we get one more thing out of it? Can you just ask one more question for us? Can you capture one little more piece of data? And that happens not because there's a binding contract, but because there's a relationship and a friendship and a trust. And that's the real thing. That's the real currency in collaboration. I'm not going to give Harold my veteran if I don't think he's going to take care of him. He's not going to give me that veteran family's children to take care of if he doesn't think I can take care of them. That's the currency in this work, really.
And I would say for us, we definitely have MOUs. We keep it simple, right? We don't get into a lot of legalese in that because we want to be able to really interpret it as human service providers. But however, we will send that to our attorney. We encourage the other party to send it to their attorney so that we'll be in lockstep with that. But I would say having the courage to step away from an MOU when you're no longer in alignment is important as well. Because oftentimes you will have MOU still in place and the relationship is not working. And so, having that candid conversation that, organization structure has changed, what we're doing is changed, it's different, and it no longer works for the other organization. Let's move away from this MOU because it's basically a dead document and also become a liar letter as well, potentially. So having the courage to step away from something that you've been a part of when the relationship is no longer working is equally as important as making sure that you capture the relationships from an MOU perspective.
Absolutely. And I think, you bring up a really good point of knowing when to kind of step away or say no. And with that, I'm going to the funder in the room. So if you've got 400 folks coming to you with these diverse ideas and funding opportunities, how are you saying no to some partnerships, while still engaging and keeping your membership roster?
Yeah, I mean, this one's hard, right? And I think sort of similar to my earlier answer, there's the no on the membership side or on sort of our internal collaboration, and then no on the grant making side. So I'll take the easy one first, which is the internal. And, I think it's staying true to your why, right? To your mission and your values and your purpose. And we could layer that idea on top of what, Steve and Harold were just sharing, right? Going back to, okay, does the idea that you have, because you're right, with a whole lot of members with a lot of enthusiasm, we get lots of ideas, and we can't be all things to all people. No one can, right? So is the idea that you have, is it mission aligned? Is it value aligned? Let's understand how, let's understand what it would take. And then let's answer, is that something that we believe will move us forward closer towards the mission that we seek and the values that we seek to be in line with, or not? And that is something that I really try to stay close to, really understanding the why of an idea. On the grant making side, it's harder. We have limited dollars to give. And I think something that our members have always prided our collective giving on, or been proud of, as it relates to our grant making, are two things. One, sort of we do a pretty thorough due diligence on the organizations that ultimately make it through for funding. And that's really, again, due to the work of our members. And so I think that sort of is it can help lead us to the organizations that we think are the best investment for us. And the other thing is the impact, right? Making grants of a decent size, right? And that also can, what $20,000 to one organization could be a great deal of money, while to another it may not be. And the same goes for $100,000, just depending on the organization that we're working with. So this is actually an area that I think we have some opportunity, and we're actually having some conversations about internally, which is, can we think about impact differently to allow us to maybe be able to say yes more often? And just get a little bit more targeted about those values that we were talking about, and what our why is. So I think it's important, maybe to that point, to also constantly reassess what our why is, and is it still the right one? And what are our values, and are they still the right ones for our organization? And then, to Harold's point, going back to say, okay, given the relationships that we're in or the work that we do, are these things still aligned with what we think we should be doing as an organization? Recognizing that, Ada Jenkins has been around a long time too. And to Harold's point, the community he serves now is not the community that Ada served when it opened. Well, the same is true for Women's Impact Fund. We're almost 20 years old, and Charlotte's not the same. So I think being willing to ask the difficult questions, and frankly, as you look for partners, thinking about partners who are willing to be in good trouble with you and ask the hard questions and talk about them together, right? And be vulnerable with each other. And, in a spirit of trust, as Steve said, so.
Great. And when you're getting, a grant report, a fund project you funded previously, Are you getting metrics back on how the partnership worked and if it didn't?
Yeah, I mean, we want to create, our goal is to create an environment where the organizations that we've invested in feel comfortable being honest with us. And that takes a relationship, and relationships take time. And we are not a funder that gives, operating support year over year over year. If you've gotten a grant from us, last year, you're likely not going to get a grant from us the following year. So that's also, so what does relationship building look like in that sort of environment? I think since I've been here, it's meant being really upfront about that in meeting with nonprofit grantees, but also being upfront to say we want to be in a relationship. We want to be able to share more than just financial resources with you. I sometimes say about Women's Impact Fund, we use social capital. So like, are there other things that we can do to support your organization outside of just financial resources, and just trying to like establish that culture of trust early on, since we are with organizations for a shorter period of time, if that makes sense. So just in the last couple of years, we've moved our grant reporting to more of a relationship-based model, right? So we used to be, oh, you're at interim grant report. Here's the link to this online form. Please go in and fill it out based on the metrics that you told us you were going to do in your grant agreement letter, right? Part of the reason for that is that we've moved to unrestricted operating support away from project-based support since COVID, really. That we made that pivot in COVID and decided that's where we needed to stay. So that in and of itself changes what a report looks like. And then again, in this spirit of the idea of trust-based philanthropy and relationships, how can we best serve the nonprofit, getting the information that we feel like we need as a grant-making organization to better inform future grant making. But what are those questions really? And do they have to be answered on a form? Can they be answered in a conversation? So that's the direction that we're moving, and really, frankly, just in the midst of that journey and what that looks like. So yes, I think if it was a collaborative effort that was funded, then we would just want to know how it's going and hope that the organizations we funded felt like they could say, you know what, it didn't work, but here's what we learned, so that we as funders could learn alongside them.
Great, thank you. So we've talked about nonprofits partnering with nonprofits, touched a little bit on nonprofits and federal, local, state governments, but I'm curious about partnerships with private organizations. So Harold and Steve, do you guys have experience with that, and how has it looked for your organization?
I'll start. I walked into a private relationship that we've had with an organization, with a company. They shared with me when I first came on board that they were moving their I guess social responsibility to another criteria, which we possibly could not fit in. And this was a substantial part of our budget. And we talk about being true to who we are. It made us reflect and look back to say, hey, are we going to chase dollars, or just really just say, well, if we no longer fit in that, then we just have to be okay with moving on from that company. And when we stood tall to say, we respect your decision to shift, because maybe you see STEM is now the way to go for you, or what have you. None of the children we have obviously are not in STEM. They're not even at grade level. We need dollars to support these children, and so we're going to continue on our mission journey. And so I'm glad we did that, because it forced them to have a conversation internally about, is it time to make that move, or is there a stair step to their decision making when they move away from organizations and they have major support there. So, and I really appreciate that, because again, nonprofits oftentimes will mission creep, if you will, which will take them out of alignment because they need those dollars in their budget, because they're thinking about the team members that it's going to impact. And so that's been my only, at this level, experience with a private partnership. That again, when I first came on, I got this shock, like, really, you're going to do that now? And so we had to make some decisions about how well we were within our own mission and philosophy, and relate it back to them But again, it turned out good because they came back and said, now is not the time to do that. So.
Jesse, it's corporate giving is interesting because there's a lot of different flavors of it. There is corporate social responsibility money. There's marketing money. There's in our work when we're helping veterans with career transition, there's talent acquisition money, right? So there's like 3 different colors of money coming out of a corporate entity. Some of it is philanthropic. Some of it is actually just business development. So you just have to, that's the nature of the work. So it's not good or bad or whatever. It's just like every donor is different. Every individual has their different, what they want to see. And I think Harold's right. You got to think about, like, generally speaking, it's probably the wrong answer if you're having to create something. It's the right answer if, like, oh yeah, we can use this to pay for something we're already doing. Or if it's enough money to grow a program into something that you should be doing, but you couldn't afford to do it. It would make your program better, to advance it in a way that's aligned. But we've been lucky. I think as an organization, we've been foundation and corporate funding heavy and individual money light, just because, frankly, individual money's hard, right? Even though the money is good, it's unrestricted, it's good, but it's if you don't have a large team, it's hard to keep everybody happy. So that's my job. That's part of what I'm working on. But that is corporate. It has its own challenges. So they all have that funding has its challenges all right around.
Of course. We got a great question here from Eric Speakman. I want to make sure we have time to touch on, that says, have you worked on any projects that have gone really formal and turned into a merger? So how do you know when maybe the right time to merge your collaboration under one maybe nonprofit, EIN number there?
We've got a couple. We've had a couple successes. We've had a couple that didn't work out, agree to disagree kind of things. Our growth. So if we had this conversation in beginning of 2020, we'd have told you we were Mecklenburg County and the 13 surrounding counties. And in the beginning of 2021, we're telling you that we're 49 counties, 45 of which are in North Carolina only. So that's because of a merger. USO of North Carolina was doing this work. They were one of the quarterback agencies working in the Eastern Piedmont. So think Fayetteville, Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Winston, High Point. It was outside their scope. It didn't ladder up to a national mission for the USO of North Carolina. We merged with their team that was doing that work. We took over their staff that was doing that work. We have a financial agreement with a small one-woman nonprofit that does veteran job readiness. We're doing her fundraising. We're doing some of her admin back office work. She's doing the part that she's really good at, which is teaching the classes that she teaches. It's not a full merger. It's not a merger of EINs. She still has a board. She's still doing some of that work. But we, as an organization, thought the worst thing that could happen is that she gets tired of all that other stuff and burns out and doesn't offer that service. So what can we take off her plate? And she's not big, so sometimes it's hard to give a little bit of money to people. Sometimes small grants are just as hard as big grants. So we're not doing it because we're great people. We're doing it because we think that what her service that she provides is great. And we want her in that fight, because without her, we don't have that service and veterans don't have it. So that's, those worked out really well. We've had some that we tried, didn't work. It's fine. We agreed to go our separate ways, but it's challenging because there's no merger and acquisition in nonprofits, right? That doesn't exist. Nobody's getting bought out. You're stepping back. So it's hard. It really is.
Yeah, and I would add, I don't have any experience in that, but I think most recently Habitat Charlotte, again, merging, or Our Town's Habitat merging with Habitat Charlotte. And then maybe a few years ago, A Child's Place, which was a nonprofit, merging with Thompson's. And so I think it was a lot of due diligence in that, a lot of community involvement around those things. But those are 2 examples, just to answer whoever had questions. Maybe they can research those 2 organizations.
I'm smiling because we said Habitat. Everybody's going to want to partner with Habitat after that big news that came out yesterday or the day before, right?
Absolutely.
So another question from a participant here is kind of about diversity in terms of partnership. Are you reaching out to organizations that are maybe serving different communities than where you traditionally focus? Examples such as Spanish-speaking organizations, or how are you, diversifying that outreach?
Go ahead, Harold.
Go ahead, Patricia.
I was going to say this. We're actually thinking about this a lot on the membership side. So we to date, I'll be honest and say, have been a predominantly white organization. We definitely have diversity in terms of race and ethnicity. We have great age diversity and great geographic diversity in our membership. But that is something that we, I think, could be stronger in, right? I'm a big believer in the idea that the more diverse perspectives that come together, the better solutions and learning that you can have together, right? So some of the things that we are talking about are some more sort of targeted outreach and other opportunities to increase access to our membership in some ways, but also just to our events. So for example, we, before COVID, you had to buy a ticket to come to most of our events, whether it was a lunch and learn or an evening signature event with like a speaker and a networking event. It was one way that we keep our annual membership donation low, was to charge ticket sales for events. Well, in COVID, when most stuff went virtual and some of our event costs went down, we eliminated ticket sales. We noticed we had an increase in guests attending our events. Well, there's value in that, right? It brings more diverse perspectives to the table. And so we are having some strategic conversations around ticket sales, and will they come back, right? Are there other ways we could think about structuring ourselves financially so that we can ensure that we are continuing to think broadly about access, to use a word that we talked about earlier, to women's impact funds. So yeah, it's something that we think a lot about, both in terms of who makes up our philanthropists, how you define a philanthropist, right? Like, my perspective is that we are all philanthropists in all different ways and shapes and forms of what we do. So how do we encourage that idea as we ultimately seek to strengthen women's philanthropy, right? So how can we diversify the women that we're bringing to the table?
And Harold, did you have anything you want? Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to add, 90% of the people we serve are people of color. And so our issue here in the North is that the people of color that we serve live in pockets of poverty, and they're clustered within their own race or what have you. And so our issue is bringing those communities together to have one voice versus separate voices, and amplifying that a bit. Because what we get here is you have African-American families and Hispanic families being served, but their voices are not coming together in a sense to the broader audience. And so people of color have been pit against one another for a while, and it creates this tension between two groups, if you will, of who's being served today. And so we don't want that, right? And so our target audience are the new residents moving into the Lake Norman area with dollars and resources that can support the neighbors that live here, that support the towns, that work in the coffee shop, that work in the fast food chains, that really can afford to live here, right? And so that's our target audience, to really amplify that voice of the impact that live here.
Yeah, Veterans Bridge Home really operates in three pillars, right? So there's connection to services, human service connection, navigation, and then employment support. And the third one is social capital, or network of friends. So we figure if you have a job and you have things to take care of you and your family, you have friends, you're going to be successful. Like, those are the things you need. And they also keep you upstream from veteran suicide, which is an issue for our community. Connection to services, employment, we're typically about 60% African-American veterans that we serve and families. But I don't know what our numbers are on social capital, but I would say they're lower, right? Our veteran serving social capital building events tend to be in areas that have been historically white. And that's not intentional. It's just because a lot of it's been volunteer led. But Opportunity Task Force said there are two cross-cutting factors that keep people from being able to achieve economic mobility. And one of them is education. So thank you, Harold and Ada Jenkins, for addressing that, that issue. And the other is social capital, right? If you don't have friends, if you don't have people to count on, it's hard to have economic mobility. And so what we're doing is we've been over the COVID, right? It's not an excuse, but nobody's been doing anything together. But like for veterans, the VFWs and American Legion they're kind of like our churches. They're pretty segregated, frankly. There are in this community, quote unquote, white and quote unquote, black halls of those groups. And you go in there and you look around, you either see people that look like you or don't look like you. So that's the opportunity for us. That's the place where we can go. Because what you don't want is like, oh, hey, we're going to go have an event in a part of town where we don't know anybody. That's not going to work. There are, these groups are already meeting. They're all by definition all veterans, so or at least family members of them. So that's the area of opportunity for us. And partnerships, I mean, our nonprofit partnerships are they're doing a good job at getting people of color supported. But our social systems still have a ways to go.
Great. And I know we're coming up on time here, but I do want to take just a moment to talk about resource competition. I mean, it's hard when you're looking for funding, you're already up against all these nonprofits, but when you consider, working with your partners, are you competing for those same pots of money independently? And how do you kind of balance what is and what isn't in the partnership there?
The one sort of success story that I'll share is our friends in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. There's an organization called Upstate Warrior Solution. They do what we do. They just do it for people in the upstate. They introduced us to Boeing. Says Boeing, if you like us, you'll like them. And we said it was wonderful. And it was a relationship that we didn't have. And it's why we serve 4 counties in South Carolina. At the same time, we said, Leon Levine Foundation, if you like what we're doing in this community, you'll like what they're doing in the upstate. It's a little different than what you asked because we don't really compete. We're not going to serve veterans in the upstate. We can't. We don't know anything about the upstate. They do. But money is finite. So, but realistically, we're getting the money we're getting from Levine's, and they were getting the money they were getting from Boeing. So I think there's room to do it. It's not easy. There's a lot of trust there. Like Charlie Hall and Upstate Warrior Solution, we see the world in very similar ways. So, but that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, trust.
And I would add, if there's a program or service that an organization is doing that's unique to the market, then that's fine to go to the same funder. But I think there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And so, again, this whole conversation has been about collaboration. If you can collaborate and partner up on applications, it should go a lot farther.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Harold said. I think, true collaboration takes courage and takes risk, right? And I think organizations have to kind of understand and figure out what their risk tolerance is. We had a grant application once that said, this is, we seek to have this, this collaborative approach to this issue, and listed 4 or 5 other collaborators, and a couple of them had also applied for funding separately. And so it made us as a funder question, well, how true and how committed are the folks who say they're committed to this collaboration, right? So I think as we said at the very beginning, collaboration is hard and takes intention and courage and time, and can be risky, but I think the payoff in the end can really be tremendous. And if we stay focused on our why, which is our community and solving some of these really big issues that organizations like Veterans Bridge Home and Ada Jenkins are seeking to address, then we're better off doing it together.
I think funders play a big role in that too, right? If I know, look, you're getting the money you're getting from me, who else does good work? Oh, okay, that's a different conversation, right? I mean, right now there's organizations that can't take anybody else. I can tell you right now, there's money that needs to go in the veteran space. It doesn't need to go to us. There are some organizations that do good work that are closed for currently, temporarily, because they're full. They can't help anybody else right now. That kind of information is good for the system to understand. And I think there's, I don't know, mean, it's not totally a zero sum out there. There's support out there, if people do work together.
Great. And I think that is kind of a beautiful sentiment to wrap up our session today, that as we all work together, we can go farther, we can have greater impact and really work to support our community and our region even better. So thank you all for joining us today. We are so glad you were able to participate and share your expertise and background with us. And of course, thank you to all of our participants. We really appreciated your questions and your willingness to learn about this really important topic. So hopefully we will see you at the next Nonprofit Seminar Series event. It will be on May 6th at 10:30 a.m. with the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. We will be hosting the Charlotte Nonprofit Policy Briefing. So it's going to be a great opportunity to learn about different pieces of legislation and policy issues that are affecting the nonprofit community. So we hope to see you then, and thank you for joining us today. Bye.